Hi everyone, this is Stephanie Girding and I'll be your facilitator today for Technology Training Best Practices brought to you from the Washington State Library. So welcome all of you today. We have a beautiful day here in Seattle. Why don't you go ahead and share in the chat where you're from. I know we have a lot of people from Washington State, but a few people from other states as well. And we do want to use the chat a lot today, so let's practice doing that. Okay, Nebraska, Maryland, Indiana, Kentucky, quite a few Washingtons all over the state. Virginia, South Carolina, wow. New York. Good, we're really covering the country a little bit here. Oregon. Great, okay. So you see where that chat is, and I do want to encourage you to use that throughout our session today. So I'll be asking you to share there at certain times, but also if you ever have a question, feel free to ask it there, or if you have a tip or something you'd like to share as well. So this is our third webinar in our Accidental Technology Trainer series. And I'd love to know how many of you have been to all three. So share that in the chat. Share whether this is your first webinar in this session or if you've been to 1, 2, or 3. All right. Oh my goodness, quite a few people that have been to all three. Few that are the first timers. Okay. Few that have gone to 2. Okay, great. Good. Thank you for sharing that. All right, well, we're going to play a little game today. So if you've been to all three, it'll probably help you a little bit. So what we're going to focus on today are best practices and specifically around how to make your training more interactive. So really using activities, letting participants really be on the computers and doing the work themselves. And this is a great thing to do because it really does help people learn better by doing it themselves, and it helps them remember what they learned, so it really helps with retention as well. We're going to share a lot of best training practices, discuss what libraries around the country are doing, and again, I'd love for you to share what you're doing at your library. And we're also going to talk a little bit about using handouts and creating PowerPoints and those sort of things and sharing tips around that. So, introducing our game for today, who knows the answer? So what we're going to do is every time you see this icon on a slide, I'm going to ask you a question. And this is just going to be a trust-based game, so you're just going to keep score on your own. So have a little scrap piece of paper by your computer that you can just keep score on. So give yourself a point for every correct answer. And some of these will just be, if you share, you get a point as well. All right. So our first quiz question today is, this is the training cycle that we've been following as we've been going through the different sessions. So share in the chat and which of the parts of the training cycle you think that we're focused on today. Which of these do you think we're focused on today? Which parts of the training cycle? Okay, and I'll give you a hint. We're going to be talking about 2 of them. Okay, there we go. We're getting it. Good. Okay, so give yourself a point if you got learning activities and learning experience. So in the first webinar, we covered training plans and needs assessments. And in the second one, workshop planning and learning objectives. And this time we're diving into learning activities and learning experience. Then in our next webinar next month, we'll be focused on evaluation. So we will do a little bit of a review of some of these first aspects of the cycle for those of you that it is your first time. So in the very first one, we talked about the workshop plan and I shared a document with you that you can use for planning your workshops and really any kind of training that you're doing in your library, because you can definitely use this if you are just doing one-on-one training to really kind of get down on paper what you're going to cover when people ask those kind of repeated questions that we get. How to write a resume, how to send an email, all of those sort of things. So you can share in the chat if you've used this already and if it's worked for you. And yeah, we can send that document back as well in the follow-up. We'll send this PowerPoint and we can send that workshop plan as well. Thank you for asking. So just kind of really trying to figure out what you're going to be training, how you're going to figure out what to cover, and this really saves you a lot of time in the long run as you're going forward. So one of the things that's really important when you're planning your training are the learning objectives part of this. So share in the chat and you can give yourself a point if you tell me why does it help us to use learning objectives? Okay, Don shared focus. Okay, good. Yeah, it helps us to focus. Thomas says clarifies the goal, keeps you on track, keeps us focused and our students focused and organized. Oh, great. Mariah shared know whether you succeeded. Yeah, definitely. Sets expectations, Thomas said. Definitely. These are all good ones you can give yourself a point for. Where we're going to determine how to get there. Good. All right, and Jeremy, I think Jen has a little issue for you. Some people in another room.
Thanks for pointing that. I missed it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Jen. Get us sent to the right, get everybody in the same room together. Okay, really good, yeah. So when you're thinking about your learning objectives, you know, if you're teaching a 1-hour class, good to have like 3 of these. Just really thinking through what do you want people to be able to walk out really being able to do. And that's really helpful as you're planning your workshop, and then also helpful that you can use these when you're advertising as well to let people know what will be covered. Kind of helps them to self-select and see if it's something that they'd be interested in. And then also, as it was shared, this also helps you know if you were successful. You can find out, can they do these things at the end? So that can be very helpful as well. And sometimes when you're planning training, you know, you're teaching Introduction to the Internet, there's a lot of different things you can cover. So just really trying to think about what are those most important things can be helpful. All right, so in the last webinar we talked about planning your content and doing it in bite-sized modules. So who can share how long those modules should be? How many minutes did we say each one should be? So this is really just sort of trying to chunk your content into bite-sized pieces so that people can understand, it can help with their attention, and it also helps with that primacy recency, which means that people remember the first things and the last things, but they don't remember the middle part of what they learn quite as much. So by chunking it into shorter segments, then you create more of those opportunities. Okay, really good. Yeah, 10 to 15 minutes. I'll go with that answer. 15 minutes, that's good. Yep. Keep it into those short chunks. So if you're using those learning objectives, then it's really easy to think about, okay, I've got 3 learning objectives. I've got an hour. I'm going to spend 15 minutes on each learning objective, and how am I going to go about that? So this is one example of how you can do that. So using the same theme of a class that's built around teaching people about emerging technologies, having your objective that you want people to be able to list and discuss social networking tools, and you want them to be able to determine the best uses for their library. So this was with a staff training. And so the activity that I used for this was a bingo game. And so this is one way that you can take those learning objectives and you can come up with a module that can take 10 to 15 minutes and really be more interactive. So instead of just giving people definitions or, standing in front of the room and talking to them about each thing, that you can make it a little more interactive. So if you just Google free bingo cards, you'll see that there's a lot of different sites that allow you to make bingo cards, and you can type the terms in and then they'll mix up the cards for you and you can print them out. And so how I used this was then I just drew a term out of a hat and had people then have to raise their hand, and they had to define the term themselves and talk about how they'd used it in their library already. So this worked out really well because not only did people share the definitions probably in much more detail than I would have, but then we got to find out how a lot of different libraries were using these different tools as well. So just thinking about ways to really help people engage with the content. And so we're going to talk more about this today and share more examples. So this was a slide that we shared in one of the webinars as well. So let's see if anybody remembers this one. This is a tough one. What does this slide represent? Any ideas? Type in the chat. I'll give you a moment to think about it. Okay. How to get them there? Not quite. It's something good to think about, though. How do you fill those chairs? So this was around a quote. This was a super hard one, so I'm not surprised no one gets it. But this was around a quote that said, if you could do what you were planning to do with no one in the room, then it's barely worth doing it. And so what this means is that trying to make it interactive, trying to change and be flexible, that organized flexibility I like to talk about with your training, and that it really depends on who is in that room with you, and you need to take into consideration what their needs are and why they're there. So definitely make sure you remember that. It's all about this active learning, right? Letting them get in the sandbox, play around, try it out for themselves. And if you think about how kids learn, that's how they learn. I think that's why they can learn technology so easily, is they're not afraid to just get in and really just experiment. So I think that's what we have to be doing in our technology classes, is letting people feel comfortable with doing that, with letting them try out things for themselves, really letting them do it themselves. So any of you remember this one? I gave you a story for this one. Anyone remember what this story represents? Let's see if it's true that people remember stories better. I think this was in our last webinar. You can share in the chat if you remember this one. Okay, somebody remember, yep. There we go. Yep, a couple of you remember that one. And so why did I share this story? Anybody remember the point I was trying to make with this one? Yeah, yep, you got it. Yep, so see, there you go. You remembered the one with the story a little bit better. Yeah, so my daughter learning to use chopsticks for the first time. I was scared that it was going to be frustrating for her when she was only 3, and she learned how to do it on her own. And I think that as trainers, that's something we have to remember, is that people are really capable of figuring out a lot more on their own than we think that they are. So sometimes I see trainers who think, I have to spell it out for them, I have to give them step by step, I have to keep everybody on the same screen at the same time, or else they're going to be lost. And that we really have to let them try to learn on their own, because that's the only way we're going to get people used to doing that and really help them be learners. There's just so much change with technology these days that we really have to encourage this mindset. All right, so let's see who remembers for another point. Who remembers who said these first 3 things, talking about how people prefer activities, what people like to be able to do on their own. So people wanting to have control over their own work, mastery, they want to get better at what they do, They want to make a contribution, and then I added relationships as well. People want to build relationships. And you know, sometimes when we're doing technology training in our libraries, sometimes I think people are signing up for classes mostly for that relationship part. They want to get out and have somebody else talk about it. So anybody remember the author that talked about these? All right, so that was Daniel Pink talking about how to motivate people, how people are self-motivated, and how to really tap into that. So that's another reason why learning interactively is really important. All right, here's one more. I don't think we've talked about this one before, but thinking about who might have said these things, this is kind of the father of adult learning, I think sometimes, someone who's attributed to a lot of this and wrote a lot of this in the 70s. If you know who that is, you can share that in the chat. So most of us are doing our technology training with adults and really trying to tap into how adults learn the best. So definitely adults are self-directed. They like to have choices, and that's really important to them. So anytime you can let them work on something that, you know, they have a choice about. Maybe you have a choice of different activities, and anything that can build on their own experiences. Everybody comes into training with their own experiences, so trying to tap into that. I don't have an answer on this one yet, so you can think about it some more. Learning needs and motivation. So they come in for some reason. There's something that they want to learn. There's some reason that they signed up or asked a question for their technology training. Trying to really tap into that as well. Trying to make sure that it's relevant for what their needs are, what they're going to be doing. Giving them time to practice, but also time to think and reflect on what they're learning, and time to share that as well. That all helps us as adult learners to be able to not only to learn, but also to remember it. And then the whole, you know, if you don't use it, you lose it aspects of thing, we have to be able to really apply our knowledge and skills right away. And then basic needs, and this is kind of getting more at Maslow, but really making sure that our mind and our body just has those basic needs, that we feel safe and all of those sort of things. So this is where, you know, you don't want to call on somebody and intimidate someone, or, you know, do something that might make them feel uncomfortable. Christina guessed blooms. No, that's not quite it there. But we do talk about blooms a lot in writing objectives. It is Malcolm Knowles. So he's done a lot of writing about adult learners. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about icebreakers, and you can give yourself a point if you share an icebreaker in the chat. So share an icebreaker that you know in the chat for a point. So really good to have some kind of opening activity in your training, and this can really help people, you know, if you have a training that's after lunch, this can really help just get people moving, but it also can help really break preoccupation. You know, somebody comes in to the training and maybe they had a hard time finding parking, or they're thinking about the groceries they need to buy or something like that. It just kind of helps people really focus on what they're going to be learning. It might help alleviate tension as well. You know, it's interesting, even, you know, with adults, we go into training, it might be the first time we've done something like this, might be the first time that they've been in an educational situation since they were in school, and it's been a while. Just kind of to break that tension, give them some connections there as well. Also good just to give everybody an opportunity to speak. You know, even if you just go around the room and let them introduce themselves, that can really help sort of break that wall between the participants and the trainer, and just get everybody a little bit more comfortable as well. And just kind of setting that tone. We're going to engage. We're going to talk together. It's okay to ask questions. And then some icebreakers, you know, are kind of creative, so it might get people thinking about that. And then hopefully it really warms up the topic concept. So what I mean by that is, you know, sometimes people do icebreakers that are just sort of fun, and they don't relate to the content as well. I think, really good if you can do both. If you can do something fun, but also really relate it to what you're going to be covering so that they learn something while they're doing it as well. Okay, so some icebreakers shared. William said telling a joke. Yeah, and sometimes that can be really good. I always tell people if you're not funny, don't go there. Don't force yourself. But, sometimes that helps even as a trainer, can help sort of ease things for you as well. I know when I was first a trainer, I was very nervous when I would go to do training. And by telling a joke when I started off, it just kind of broke that feeling for me that, that wall again for me even between people, and everybody would laugh, and then you just kind of feel like, oh, okay, we're just all people here together, we're going to have a good time. So that can be a really good thing. A couple people said doing introductions. Yeah, I mean, that's really good. Just it can be that simple. Expectations, Michelle shared. Yeah, really good. Just trying to set those, find out, why did people come? Asking everyone, what would you rather be doing? That's an interesting one. Yeah. If you had the next hour, what would you rather be doing? Okay. And Jen, it was Malcolm Knowles. I'll type that in the chat too. Okay. And two truths and a lie, someone shared. That's a fun one as well, where you have people come up with two things that are true and one thing that isn't, and have the rest of the people guess which one they think is a lie. That can be kind of a creative one as well. Okay, and Mariah said she shares that a year ago she wasn't doing this, that she was thrown into and learned a lot while I was preparing, and that she's mostly self-taught, so she's still constantly learning, and that's the best way for them to learn is to do it. Definitely. Really good to, almost all of us are self-taught at doing this, and just letting people feel comfortable, letting them realize, it's not like you went to school and got a degree in technology training to learn all of this. That's definitely the mindset we've got to get people doing. Okay, and Thomas asked, how long do you generally spend on icebreakers? So that kind of depends on how long your workshop is going to be. If you're doing something that's a day long or three hours or an hour. And if you only have an hour, I wouldn't spend too much time, so maybe 3 minutes, 5 minutes at the most. Definitely try to tie into the content if you just have that amount of time. I remember being in a workshop where it was like an hour long and somebody spent 15 minutes on the icebreaker, and it was just sort of a fun icebreaker, and I thought, oh, I think you're, losing an opportunity here. You're losing some time to really cover what people are here for. Mariah shared, what if I only have an hour every week to do this and get through the entire class? Do you still encourage icebreakers and introductions? Yeah, so definitely, even just having them do an introduction, you can even start having them share like before the start time, right? If people are coming in, just kind of going around and talking to people individually, finding out why they're there, and then you can kind of sum it up for everybody when you want to start on time. But yeah, if you only have an hour, definitely you don't want to spend too long on this. So I have a list of all kinds of ideas for different icebreakers and learning activities, and I'll cover a couple of these in more depth, but just so you have this list later when we send it out to you as well. One that I think is kind of fun is the chocolate hugs and kisses, and I saw a trainer doing this in a library. So she had a big bowl of those Hershey's hugs and Hershey's kisses, and she had this whole thing worked out, like if you made a mistake on the computer, you got a hug, and if you answered a question or asked a question even, you got a kiss. But just sort of something fun, and chocolate always does seem to help things for a lot of people. So that's a good one to think about doing. And then, just working some of these in. We'll go through some of these more in depth as well, but definitely ask if you have questions about any of them. One thing that some of these can really help with is to just do a quick assessment to find out where people are. Because I know that is one of our problems sometimes with technology training in libraries, is that we don't know until we get them together what their skill levels are going to be. So trying to figure that out can often be good. So you can do some sort of easy polling, like having people raise hands, right? So just trying to figure out what they already know or why they came to the workshop, what it is that they want to learn just by a raise a hand can be a really easy way to do it. Asking them when they share in the introductions or when you're going around the room before you get started, why did you sign up? Why are you here? Just making it as easy as that, you know, because sometimes people do have specific reasons that they're attending a training. So trying to, again, have that organized flexibility so you can try to help people can be really important. Also, if there is, you can share in the chat how you handle registration at your library. But some people have people register ahead of time, some people just have people show up. But if you are having them register ahead of time, you can have some prerequisites if you need to, you know, that people need to be able to have certain skills before they join a workshop depending on your content. So you might want them to be able to use a mouse already or type, or, you know, maybe already be familiar with Word depending on what you're going to be doing. But you can also just have them answer a couple of questions too to figure out sort of what their skill levels are. And then, as I said, having a variety of activities. So maybe you have some things that they're going to be working on their own for one of those modules. So maybe you have 15 minutes in a class where maybe you're teaching about writing resumes and you have 15 minutes where they're going to be working on their own. So maybe you have a template already ready with a resume, and maybe another example is that you have a worksheet that they can write on and fill out first, because for some people it's hard for them to sort of compose on the computer and to get all that down. So having it in writing first might be the first step of where they're at. Or, you know, if you're doing something like a Microsoft Word class, you know, you might have a lot of different skill levels there. So you might have somebody who's practicing writing a letter and somebody else that's practicing mail merge, you know, all of those different skills. So writing that up and having a one-page list of some different things that they can do on their own, and then just letting them select which one they want to work at. You can also do something sort of anonymously, like passing out some index cards and having them write their questions or answer that question of why you're here. This is kind of a nice way for people to anonymously share, and you can then, you know, as they're working on something, read those yourself to find out, make sure that you're meeting all those needs as well. You can also do some kind of icebreaker. I did a staff training that was really fun that had a fishing theme. So I actually had a big blue tablecloth on the wall that was supposed to be our fish pond. And then I had little paper fish cut out. And I had people write down, what is it that you want to learn in our time together today? And then they all added their fish to that pond so that we could see what it was everybody was there for and what they wanted to learn, which is really nice because as, you know, adult learners, it lets them think about that for themselves, sort of set a goal. But then as a trainer, it lets you know as well what you're going to be doing. So we had one person who shared in the chat about how they handle registration. So they have people register ahead of time. If not 4 or more people that are registered, then they cancel the workshops. Okay, good to know. So definitely that's something that I know a lot of us are still trying to figure out, and definitely changes based on our different communities. Some people have tons of people waiting for the classes, and some people are still trying to get people there. So another thing that you can do is set up some training partners. So this can be good whether you're doing staff training or public training, but just to pair people together. So if you're doing staff training, this could be something that you do maybe even for a 6-month period, that you have 2 staff members paired up together and share what they're learning with each other. But if this is just in a workshop type setting, this can also be a really good thing if you have a lot of varied skill sets where you have somebody who's maybe more of an expert and somebody who's maybe more of a beginner, and have them pair up together to work on exercises. And this is something, you know, you can assign and move them around, or you can just let them pick. Or, you know, sometimes we don't have enough computers for everybody to have one, so you can double up people on a computer as well and have them share and work through things together as well. So there's a lot of different things that you can do if you do pair people up. So these are some examples. So you can have people answer questions. You can have, you know, short exercises that they do. You can have them, you know, give them a handout that has blanks in it where they have to fill in the steps. Or you can set up some problems that they have to troubleshoot on. They can just practice with each other. They can have a time where they have to review with each other what was covered, you know, just to talk it through. Another good way to really help people with learning. You can have them sit together and draw some questions that they have. And that's a good way, too, for them to kind of process what they've learned as well. Or you can show them, you know, you can give them a quiz and then have them work together and find out, you know, can they come up with all the right answers if they work together on it. So these are shared in a book called 101 Ways to Make Training Active, and it's a really great book, and he's got all kinds of different ways to think about this and ways to try to make things more interactive. All right. So share in the chat if you've ever done this. I call it speed sharing. I've heard it called some other things as well, but it's sort of like speed dating where, you know, people get to meet a lot of different people at one time. There's a couple different ways to do this. One thing that you can do is make everybody stand in two lines facing each other, and then have them talk to each other for a few minutes. So it might be that they share something that they've learned or share a problem that they have. This can be really great for staff sharing as well, but also a good one for the public when they're wanting to connect with each other as well. You can also just, instead of having the lines, just have people, you know, pick somebody to talk to, and then when the 3 minutes is up, have them, you know, move around the room and pick somebody new to talk to. You can do that more organically as well. Okay, and then this is one that everybody seems to like, and I know when I first started doing it, sometimes I'd be nervous that people were going to think it was really silly, but it seems like most people really enjoy doing it. So you would basically have a snowball fight. You have them write down on a piece of paper something. I like to use it as a review, so have them write down one thing that they want to remember that they learned, or something that they want to share, a tip about the training. Then they ball it into a paper ball, and we start a snowball fight. So they have to stand up and throw their pieces of paper, and as they fall, pick them up and keep them in the air, and you do that for a minute or so. This is also a really good one after lunch. You can do this also as a beginning activity, too, if you need to get people up and moving a little bit, if everybody had pasta for lunch. You know, and have people share what it is, why they signed up, why they were there. Or, you know, you can have them write questions down and share that way, however you want to use this. This is also a nice one because then it does make a review, because then at the end you have everybody take one of the balls and smooth it out and read what was written down. And then if you have like 6 people share out what they learned, what they want to remember, that's a really nice review for people as well. For staff training, I really think that this is a good one. Each one, teach one. So doing this in some different ways, but having people who go to training come back and share with somebody else, share the material, share what they learned. Again, good for us as adults to remember what it is, but then also it extends that training. And, you know, they always say if you're teaching somebody else, that's the real way that you're learning. So that can be a really good thing to do as well. Even doing something like I've seen some libraries develop some study groups. So if you're wanting people to stay up to date on new technologies, do something like that. That can be really fun. You know, and just really thinking about that we need to be experiencing things. And sometimes that's not only by taking a class or reading a book. sometimes with these new technologies, we really just have to be out there trying them and seeing what's out there. And, you know, it seems like there's new software every week that we can be learning. And just like things like Facebook and those sort of things, that you really have to learn them by playing with them and doing it yourself. Okay, any questions so far? So I've got a quote down here at the end, so if you can name this one, this is another tricky one, see if you know who said this. But I do really advocate storytelling. And definitely as humans, you know, we like stories. We like to hear people sharing stories, but it is really true that people remember stories better. So even sharing with people one way that you've used the software before, or, you know, just those experiences, or some kind of funny story as well, really helps a lot. Daniel Pink again said that story is context enriched by emotion. And a lot of people talk about how emotion does come into play with learning. So that's another way to really connect. So this quote in the bottom, I don't see anybody getting at it, so I'll give you some hints. So this is someone from NPR. See if that helps. And it's a man. And he said, everything is more compelling when you talk like a human being, when you talk like yourself. Someone on NPR who's really good at sharing stories. All right, yes, Thomas got it. Ira Glass from This American Life, who's wonderful for sharing stories, of course. And it's definitely true, you know, that when we're doing training, it's okay to share these stories and to just really be yourself. Sometimes I think, you know, we get in front of a class and I've seen people think that they have to like play the professor or something and just get up there and lecture. But really we can just be ourselves and we can share, you know, one time I was doing this and messed up this way and this is how I fixed it, or, you know, any of those kind of stories really helps people connect and feel more comfortable using the technologies. So I've worked as a consultant for TechSoup for libraries, and one of the things that they're doing right now is sharing a lot of success stories around how libraries are using technology. So they interview librarians all around the country to find out what they're doing. A lot of this is in connection with the EDGE initiative, if you're familiar with that. That'll be launching next year. That's a technology benchmarking tool. And if you haven't heard about it, you probably will be soon. So they have a lot of great examples on their website, TechSoupForLibraries.org. And I'll share a couple of these, but definitely go through and see what you can find. So one, I think this was Princeton Public Library, has a tech club, which I thought was a great idea. So people just get together, the public members run it and share about different technology, how they're using things, planning things. And this has been going on for years. And sometimes libraries have one that's just for Mac users or PC users or around specific topics, but just a nice way for people to really get in and do the training and really run it themselves as well, which helps us. All right. You have one for iPads, Leanne. Great, good, yeah. All right, so share in the chat if you've done a technology petting zoo, and you can give yourself a point for that. Or you can give yourself a point if you share what a technology petting zoo is. All right, good. Okay, a couple of you are, okay, great, Thomas, doing a lot of petting zoo and gadget galleries. Wonderful. If you're not doing it, you can just share what it is. Okay, there you go, Michelle, yep. Come and get your hands on the new gadgets. Yep, setting up a time for patrons to play with the technology and the gadgets. Good. Yeah, just trying it out, whether it's for your staff or for the public, really letting them do that. And one of the stories on TechSoup is an interview with Susan Allen from Worthington Libraries. And she shared that something kind of interesting, they did a county-wide Tech Help Week. So they did a petting zoo and all kinds of classes, but what was unique was that they partnered with other libraries in the county. So there were several different libraries, and so had different events at the different libraries. And I thought that was a great way to kind of share. You know, sometimes we get a little overwhelmed by what we're doing, but really thinking about, are there other libraries nearby that you could partner with? Even different types of libraries this would work with as well. Okay, let me catch up with chat a little bit here. Leanne says they're trying it again, doing one right now and having another in December. Jenny said they did one and nobody came, even though they get questions all the time. All right, maybe try that one again. Maybe people didn't understand what it was. Okay, and Hannah said, how can we do that without the budget to buy all those devices? Very good question. So there are a couple of ways that I've seen this happen. One is that some, depending on where you live, some of the big box stores, like Best Buy, will actually come and do this for you. They have a whole program where they'll bring in the technology and put it on for you. And I've heard that, you know, it's not a big sales event or anything like that, so that can be a really good way to get that done if you have one of those nearby, or any kind of computer store, you know, go and talk to them and ask them if they would help you with that. Leanne shared our state loans them out. Yeah, so is that your state library, Leanne? So there are some state libraries that have those as well. Okay, great, good. Dolores said we're thinking about having some devices out at our information desk that can be checked out for in-house use. Wonderful. For magazines, yeah, really good to show people that. And then I've also seen staff who have actually brought them in themselves to share with other staff members. And I even have seen a couple of libraries that have had the public help with this. So they set up tables and then said, bring in your device if you're willing to let people use it, and show them how to use it. And so they had a lot of people sign up that were willing to do that, and, you know, just had people go around the room. You know, sometimes people get really excited to show off their devices. I know my husband always likes to have the latest whatever it is. So he's probably happy to show other people about it as well. So that's a good question about if you don't have the budget to buy all these things, right? Okay, how about taking training on the road? Anybody doing this? You can share in the chat and give yourself a point. Sharon says they have tech time one-on-one sessions with either professional library staff or their #1 tech tutor volunteer. Wonderful. Good. All right, so training on the road. So this is another good thing that you can do. I've seen a lot of libraries that get laptop lab grants that they can take out around. Great, and Beth shared that they go to the community college and use their lab to teach. That's a wonderful idea as well. Really good. Okay, and Athena says, on the spot, the trainer goes to the employee's desk. Okay, great. Yeah, really nice. So that can be great. Good partnerships with local community members. I've also seen a lot done like at senior centers and community centers. So finding out, you know, where those labs are in your community if you don't have things to, laptops to take out yourself, and seeing if you can do some classes there. On TechSoup, there's even an example of a library that actually goes into people's houses and is doing some outreach, which of course there's some safety concerns around that they worked on to make sure that it was safe for their staff. But yeah, you can't get more personal than that, I think. Okay, good. So share in the chat if you're using Teams to help with your technology at all, how you're using Teams. So this is Albany Public Library. I found online they have a YouTube video that was made by some teens, as you can see here, and they do a little skit where they show how to download ebooks to iPads. And they have a couple different versions, but just a really fun little thing, but it definitely does show, you know, in a 4-minute video the steps that you need to take. So I thought that that was a great way to get some technology training using those volunteers. Okay, and Leanne said that they have the teams help with the tech petting zoo. Wonderful. Great example there. Yeah, and the teams can usually figure these things out Pretty fast. Okay, and Christina said they have student workers that help other students with their tech needs issues. Good, good. I've also seen libraries that pair teens and seniors together. Sometimes that can be a really good combination. And if you're doing more of a formal training, you know, you can have teens help, you know, sort of be the second trainer. So if people get stuck and those sort of things, they can help them individually. Or even having teens do one-on-one training. So have them, you know, have from 3 to 4 or something, have time slots that people can sign up to have some one-on-one training with them. That can be a really good thing as well. Okay, good. All right, so this is Snow Isle Libraries here in Washington. Is anybody here from Snow Isle? You can share it in the chat. So this is a program that they got funding from the Paul Allen Family Foundation from their Library Foundation, Librarians as Information Guides. And this is Krista Worley here in purple. She said, we get up out of our chairs, we do dynamic interactive activities that help adult learners learn and continue that learning outside of the class. So they have a lot of different topics that I thought was really interesting. So healthy and happy for life, navigating the online health information maze, myth-busting science, being informed consumer, smart investing resources, downloading ebooks at your library. And this is kind of a fun thing to think about too, because I think sometimes we get a little burnt out on training the same thing all the time, right? And even though we still need to cover the basics, it seems like everywhere we still have people coming in that don't know how to use a mouse or getting on the internet for the first time. But, you know, getting some funding to set up something a little bit different and reach out to people in a different way can be a really good thing. And Mary also shared they have teen tech tutors twice a month on Friday evenings. Great. That provide one-on-one training. Great idea. Really good. All right. Thank you all for all of your sharing today. Whoops, and I forgot to move this one out of the way. This is Chicago Public Library's YOUmedia. So share in the chat if you know anything about YOUmedia. It seems like it's gotten a lot of attention. Sorry, I covered up this one with my little thing. I didn't realize transitions didn't work in this platform at first. Anyone know about YOUmedia? You can give yourself a point if you've heard about some of their interactive training that they're doing. So they've Chicago Public Library has set up all kinds of places where teens can come in, and they got funding from Time Warner, and they do things like have teens create music videos and have them, you know, build computers from scratch and all kinds of really great activities. And I think some of them, like, you can't even walk in unless you're a teen, and they have like separate entrances and those kind of things, but has been really great outreach for their community and a really good way to serve teens. So you can look at more information about that as well. How about Techmobiles? Anybody have a Techmobile? Share in the chat. So this is a new one that Arlington Public Library in Texas got, where they're doing training, and I just thought really nice. You know, usually it looks more like a bookmobile, but this to me really looks like a little computer lab on wheels. And this is another example, a Tech-to-Go program. So they have laptop computers and hotspots that they check out to library patrons. So they check the computers out like a book with their hotspots, so they can go home and use the internet and use the laptops from home, and preloaded them with all kinds of great software, and are doing really successful English as a second language classes as well for Spanish speakers at their local churches. So just some other good ideas of what people are doing out there at other libraries. So share in the chat if there's anything you haven't shared already that you're doing that's maybe a little unique as far as technology training is concerned. Or, you know, even if you have a good tip to share, share that in the chat. We want to make sure that we keep gathering all those stories, because you never know what might inspire someone else. So I did want to talk a little bit about creating PowerPoints. So also share in the chat if you have tips about creating PowerPoints. I feel like this is something that I just work on every year, and that it's definitely gotten a lot easier. So this is from trainer Garr Reynolds, if you've heard of him before, and I'll send a link to that article in your PowerPoint as well. But he has a lot of things, you know, trying to keep it simple, trying to limit as much text as you have, trying to limit animations and those kind of things. You know, remember when we were first using computers and everybody had those like blinking icons and things that can be kind of distracting. All right, and it was asked in chat, where do you find those high quality graphics? So share if you have any answers to that question. Lately, these days, I've been using a lot of mine. You know, I used to spend a lot of time trying to find graphics and going on Flickr and those kind of sources. But now, the built-in the Microsoft Online PowerPoint images are really amazing. They have really added, I'd say just in the last year, they've really changed that. So if you look online, and you know, you can link to it from within PowerPoint itself. But it's a wonderful database of just all kinds of images, and you can search on it really well now. You know, you can find one image, and there's a link to click on other ones that are like it as well. Dolores said she's curious about how many people use PowerPoints during their tech training. I use the programs I'm teaching. Okay, definitely share in the chat. On occasion, like for digital pictures, I have a PowerPoint, but go back and forth between it and the computer. Yeah, and I think that's a really good way to do it. It's definitely true to use it wisely. You know, if you don't need to have it, don't, you know, use it. But as we've shared in one of the other webinars, that it is a way to add visual interest, and you do have people that learn best that way, that are visual learners. So giving them something to look at and another way to learn can be really good. And you know, it just always helps with kind of keeping things on track as well. Letting people see the big picture can be really helpful as well. Okay, we have PowerPoints for after training reviews. Okay, that's a great idea too. Sharing that later can be a good thing to do. And Garr is also really against having those big visual themes, trying to make it more simple. So just like this, having it just a white background can be really a good thing to do as well. He also advocates spending time in the slide sorter, which when I read this as a tip from him was really helpful to me. So if you go into PowerPoint, you can find the slide sorter. And it's really nice because it just shows you really like thumbnail size of all your slides, and you can move them around and reorder them from there. So I find that it really helps me to organize my content from there. So if I've got those learning objectives set and I'm going to spend, you know, chunk my time making sure that I've got 15 minutes worth of slides or content all, you know, in the right order, that can be a really good thing to do as well. And it can also help you see is, you know, do you have any repetition, you know, slides that you can get rid of. Okay, Sheridan, a good tip in the chat, beware of color. Some people are colorblind. Yes, my husband is colorblind, so definitely being careful with that is a really good idea. Okay, and Jen shared icon finder for graphics. Good, thank you. Okay, and I always like to remind everybody that it's about the people and not the technology. So definitely as you're thinking about some of these things, remembering that that's the most important thing, right? That it doesn't really matter about the technology that we have or the technology that we're teaching. We're really trying to help people. So making sure that we definitely keep our focus on that is always a good thing. So there are a lot of free training resources out there. So I think it's definitely good, instead of reinventing the wheel and making new handouts or coming up with new ideas for lesson plans and those kind of things, that you really look at what's already out there. So these are some links that you can follow as you go forward. Definitely TechSoup and WebJunction are always good. And then these are some other sites that are really good for finding free handouts that are already developed, or tutorials, or videos. And that can be another really good thing to add to your training. Letting people go through a short tutorial as part of the class, one of your 15-minute segments, or using one of the Common Craft videos that really explain techie topics in an easy way can be something to do as well. So definitely take a look at that and share in the chat if there's other resources that you use that you found really helpful as well. I always think it is really good to think about those. So leaving with a quote, tell me I will forget, show me I may remember, but involve me and I will understand. You can give yourself a point if you know who said this. But this is another tricky one. So just really trying to remember that letting people do it themselves, get on the computers, use it, they'll find out what it is that they wanted to learn can definitely be a good one. All right, so I can never find out who exactly said this one, so you can give yourself a point even if you didn't know. Because, yeah, I think this is, sometimes they say Confucius or, something like that, but I can never find the real source of this one. But this one is from Confucius. He who knows all the answers has not been asked all the questions. So any questions that you have as we wrap up today, make sure you ask those as we're ending up our time together. And then to give yourself another point, share in the chat something that you learned today that you want to remember. We'll do our own little review here. So share in the chat something that you learned, whether it was from me or something that was shared in the chat, since all of you were very interactive, or something that you haven't even shared yet that you want to share about technology training and using exercises and making training interactive. Okay, good. Snowball fight, bingo cards. Michelle wants a tech petting zoo, wonderful. Checking out hotspots, bingo cards. Links to resources, good. Training partners, hugs and kisses. Bingo cards, got a couple of points. Petting zoo, using teams for the petting zoo. All right, and Jen's going to do the snowball fight on Friday. Good, let me know how it goes. Okay, Myra likes the quote. Okay, very good. Yeah, encourage them not to be afraid. That's a big one. Tech petting zoo, using people in the communities and their devices. Wonderful, good. Okay, so let's see. Share now, how many points do you have? Add up your points and let's see who won our game today. 4 points. Oh, another 4. Oh, 6. Christina's got you beat. Michelle. Anybody beat 6 points? 6.5. Anybody beat 6.5? I guess I had some tough ones. All right. If you can't beat 6.5, I think Beth is going to be our winner. San Juan. I think I might have to go deliver your prize in person, though. So, yes, the quotes were very tough, yes. But it kept you paying attention, I hope, and I'm hoping that writing down those points also kind of helped as well. Wonderful. Okay, well, definitely email me if you have any questions, stephaniegerding@gmail.com. We will send out a follow-up email with the document that I shared for planning and also this PowerPoint as a PDF that you can use as well. And thank you all for attending. We do have our last webinar next month. If you're interested in signing up for that one, it will be on November the 6th, again at 9 o'clock. And we'll be on improving technology training. So we'll talk a lot more about evaluation. All right, thank you everyone for joining us.